The old man's left hand had been trembling for 40 seconds, and Chen knew she had exactly 90 seconds left before irreversible brain damage began, if she was right. 6 hours earlier, the constellation occupied the 62nd floor of Chicago's Aon Center, where tables were booked 4 months in advance, and a single meal cost what many families spent on groceries in a month. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered vertiginous views of Lake Michigan, its surface hammered silver in the afternoon light, while inside, Brazilian rosewood panels and hand-blown Lalique light fixtures created an atmosphere of hushed opulence. The carpet was custom-woven in lion, the silverware was Christoffel. Even the air smelled expensive, white truffles, aged Bordeaux, and the particular silence that only $700 entrees could buy. Chen moved through this rarefied world like a shadow, her 24-year-old body encased in the restaurant's regulation uniform. Crisp white shirt, black vest with satin lapels, black trousers creased sharp enough to cut paper, hair scraped into a chignon so tight it made her scalp ache. Exhaustion had carved dark crescents beneath her eyes and hunched her shoulders despite years of her mother's scolding about posture. She had been standing for 9 hours already, since the lunch shift began at 11. Her shift wouldn't end until midnight. Tomorrow she would do it again. 2 years ago, had been finishing her final year at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine, specializing in emergency neurology. She had scored in the 98th percentile on her boards, published research on acute ischemic stroke intervention, and been offered a residency at Johns Hopkins. Then her father's construction company had collapsed under the weight of a lawsuit, a worker's death, faulty equipment, negligence claims that devoured everything. The settlement and legal fees had totaled $680,000. Her parents had lost their house, their savings, their future. Her father had aged 20 years and 6 months. Had made a choice, though it hadn't felt like choosing. Withdraw from medicine, find work that paid immediately, help her parents survive. She had been here ever since, refilling water glasses for people who looked through her like she was furniture. Tonight's crowd represented Chicago's apex predators. Real estate developers, tech founders, old railroad money. And at table 12, the restaurant's premier corner position, sat Richard Ashford, founder and CEO of Ashford Dynamics, a defense contracting empire valued at $6.2 billion. Richard himself commanded a personal fortune of $1.8 billion, according to Forbes. He wore a bespoke Tom Ford suit in charcoal gray that had been tailored in London, with Hermes cufflinks that cost more than Maya's monthly rent. At 49, Richard possessed the aggressive confidence of men who built empires from nothing and believed their success proved their superiority in all domains. His face, tanned from skiing in Gstaad, held an expression of permanent evaluation, as though everything existed solely for his judgment. He was dining with his father, Howard Ashford, 76, the original founder of the company Richard had expanded into a juggernaut. Howard was different from his son, quieter, gentler, with kind eyes and old-fashioned courtliness. He wore a navy blazer that had been expensive once, but was now slightly worn at the cuffs. When Maya had approached to take their drink order, Howard had looked directly at her, actually looked, making eye contact, and said, "Thank you, dear," when she brought his water. It was such a small thing, being seen. But after 2 years of invisibility, it had landed like sunlight through prison bars. Richard's doctor had joined them, Dr. Marcus Webb, whose practice catered exclusively to Chicago's wealthiest families. He wore Armani and a Patek Philippe watch worth $85,000. Maya had overheard their conversation while pouring wine. Howard had been experiencing headaches, some confusion, fatigue. Dr. Webb had dismissed it as stress, prescribed sleeping pills, and ordered expensive but unnecessary cardiac tests. Maya had bitten her tongue hard enough to taste blood. The symptoms Howard described were textbook warning signs of transient ischemic attacks, mini strokes that preceded major ones. But she was a waitress now, not a doctor. Her opinion meant nothing. She was clearing their appetizer plates when Howard's fork clattered to his plate with a sound that made her freeze. "Dad." Richard's voice carried irritation, not concern. "You all right?" "I'm fine, just clumsy." Howard's words slurred slightly, the syllables melting together. Maya's hands tightened on the plate she held. She watched Howard lift his wine glass with his right hand. His left hand remained motionless on the table, fingers curled slightly. His left eyelid drooped, almost imperceptible unless you knew what to look for. "Are you sure you're feeling well, Mr. Ashford?" Maya's voice came out steady despite her hammering heart. Richard glanced at her with obvious annoyance. "He said he's fine. We don't need." "I'm just a bit tired," Howard interrupted gently, but his smile was crooked, pulling wrong on the left side. Left-sided facial droop. Left arm weakness. Slurred speech. Maya's medical training screamed stroke protocols, time windows, the critical minutes when intervention meant the difference between recovery and permanent disability. But she was a waitress. If she was wrong, she would be fired. If she caused a scene over nothing, embarrassed a billionaire in public, she would never work in this city again. Howard lifted his water glass with his right hand. His left hand remained motionless, trembling slightly. 40 seconds of observation. 90 seconds until irreversible damage. Maya set down her plates and made a choice. "Mr. Ashford, I need you to smile for me." Maya's voice cut through the ambient restaurant noise with unexpected authority. Richard's head snapped toward her, his expression darkening. "Excuse me? Who do you think, please?" Maya ignored him, focusing entirely on Howard. "Just smile. Show me your teeth." Howard looked confused but complied, and Maya's heart sank. His smile was grotesquely asymmetric, the left side of his face barely moving, drooping like melted wax. Around them, nearby diners had paused their conversations, sensing drama. "Now raise both your arms," Maya said, her voice taking on the calm firmness she'd learned in emergency rotations. "Straight out in front of you." "This is ridiculous." Richard stood abruptly, his face flushing red. "You're a waitress, not a—" "He's having a stroke," Maya said flatly. "Right now." His left facial droop, left arm weakness, and slurred speech are classic signs. "We have maybe 3 minutes before permanent brain damage begins." She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Are you insane?" Richard's voice rose loud enough that the entire restaurant turned to stare. "My father was just examined yesterday by Dr. Webb, one of the finest physicians in Chicago, who prescribed sleeping pills for stroke symptoms," Maya interrupted, her phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I need an ambulance at the Constellation, Aeon Center, 62nd floor. 76-year-old male, suspected acute ischemic stroke, left-sided deficits." Richard grabbed her wrist with enough force to make her gasp. "Hang up that phone right now, or I will have you arrested for harassment and practicing medicine without a license." "Richard." Howard's voice came out thick, frightened. "My arm. I can't." His left arm had slumped to the table, useless. Dr. Webb finally leaned forward, his expression skeptical. "Mr. Ashford, you're simply stressed. This young woman is causing unnecessary panic. FESD protocol," Maya said sharply, yanking her wrist free from Richard's grip. Face drooping, arms weak, speech difficulty, time to call 911. It's the most basic stroke assessment in emergency medicine. If I'm wrong, you can sue me for everything I don't have. If I'm right, and we waste time arguing, your father loses brain function with every second. She turned back to her phone. "Patient is conscious, but deteriorating. Yes, we need immediate transport to Northwestern for possible TPA intervention." "Northwestern?" Richard's voice dripped contempt. "My father will go to Rush, where Dr. Webb has privileges. Northwestern has the only level 1 stroke center within the critical window," Maya snapped. "Rush is 14 minutes farther in current traffic. That's 14 minutes of brain cells dying. Your choice, ego or your father's recovery." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Diners watched with naked fascination. Gerard, the maitre d', stood frozen near the kitchen doors, uncertain whether to intervene. Howard made a small sound of distress. His left eyelid had drooped further, and confusion clouded his eyes. "Richard, something's wrong." Dr. Webb finally stood and performed a cursory examination, checking Howard's pupils with a penlight. Maya watched him miss the subtle left gaze deviation, fail to test grip strength properly, skip the critical language assessments. He straightened, his expression still dismissive. "I see some minor asymmetry, but stroke seems extreme. Most likely a vasovagal response to rich food and wine." "Howard, I think we should." "His symptoms started 43 minutes ago," Maya interrupted, checking her watch. "I saw a left hand tremor during appetizers. The therapeutic window for TPA is 4.5 hours from symptom onset, but outcomes are exponentially better within the first hour. We've already lost 43 minutes. Please. She looked directly at Richard. Please let me help him. Richard stared at her, his face cycling through anger, confusion, and something else, the first flicker of real fear. How do you know this? You're a waitress. I was a fourth-year medical student at Northwestern, emergency neurology specialty, before my life fell apart, Maya said quietly. I've studied stroke protocols for 3 years. I've watched people die because they waited too long. Your father has maybe 90 seconds before we hit the point where damage becomes irreversible. Please. The word please broke something in Richard's expression. He looked at his father, really looked, and saw the drooping face, the useless arm, the fear in those kind eyes. Dad, his voice cracked. Can't feel. Howard's speech deteriorated to barely comprehensible syllables. Richard's phone was out before Maya finished speaking. I need my helicopter on the roof now. Medical emergency. He turned to Maya, his earlier arrogance replaced by desperate urgency. You, come with us. If you're wrong about this, I will destroy you. If you're right. He didn't finish. The ambulance was 17 minutes out. The helicopter was 4. Maya made another choice. Gerard, I need ice packs, all you have. Table 12's bill is comped. Add it to my tab if you have to. She turned to Howard, taking his working hand gently. Mr. Ashford, we're going to get you help. Stay with me. Can you tell me what year it is? 2:20. The words died. For minutes. They had 4 minutes to get him to a stroke center, into imaging, and receive TPA before the window narrowed from good outcome to permanent disability. Richard's helicopter landed on the roof with a sound like the end of the world. The helicopter's rotors screamed against the Chicago night as Maya Chen, still wearing her waitress uniform, crouched beside Howard Ashford and monitored his deteriorating neurological signs. Richard sat across from them, his expensive suit rumpled, his phone pressed to his ear as he screamed orders at Northwestern's emergency department. Dr. Webb had been left behind, sputtering protests on the 62nd floor. Stroke team to emergency, stat, Richard barked. Howard Ashford incoming, suspected CVA, get imaging ready, and your best neurologist, Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, Maya interjected. She specializes in acute intervention. Tell them possible left MCA territory infarct. Patient is within the TPA window, but deteriorating. Richard repeated her words verbatim, no longer questioning her expertise. He ended the call and stared at her. How long were you in medical school? For years. I was 2 months from my MD when I withdrew. Why? The question wasn't hostile anymore, just bewildered. Maya kept her eyes on Howard's pupils, checking response with her phone's flashlight. My father's construction company was sued after a worker died. Settlement and legal fees were $680,000. They lost everything. I made a choice. Her voice was flat, factual. 2 years of grief had compressed into something hard and small. The helicopter touched down on Northwestern's helipad 6 minutes after leaving the Constellation. The stroke team was waiting, Dr. Okonkwo, 2 residents, 3 nurses. They had a gurney moving before the rotors stopped spinning. Maya rattled off her observations to the trauma resident, 76-year-old male, symptom onset approximately 48 minutes ago, progressive left facial droop, left arm paralysis, aphasia, left gaze preference. Dr. Okonkwo interrupted. And you are? She's with me, Richard said with unexpected force. She identified the stroke. Listen to her. They rushed Howard through doors Maya had walked through 1,000 times as a student, into the CT scanner, then to the intervention suite. Maya stood outside the observation window, no longer needed, watching the team work with an ache of longing so intense it felt like drowning. Richard stood beside her, silent for a long moment. Then, Dr. Webb has been our family physician for 12 years. He dismissed everything you saw in 90 seconds. He's a concierge doctor who treats rich people's anxiety and prescribes expensive placebos, Maya said quietly. Stroke assessment requires different training. Different eyes. Your eyes. Richard turned to face her fully. Why didn't you say something earlier? When my father first mentioned symptoms. Because I'm a waitress. My medical opinion means nothing. I have no credentials, no authority, no right to contradict a licensed physician. If I'd spoken up at the table and been wrong, I would have been fired and probably sued. If I'd been right, same outcome, Who would believe me? She watched the team position Howard for the TPA infusion. I only spoke because silence meant watching him die. The procedure took 90 minutes. When Dr. Okonkwo emerged, her expression was cautiously optimistic. We got TPA in at 53 minutes from onset. Imaging shows good recanalization of the left MCA. He's responding. Already has some motor function returning in that left arm. Whoever recognized this early saved his brain. She looked at Maya. The paramedics said a waitress made the call. Former medical student, Richard said. Northwestern, class of 2 years ago. Dr. Okonkwo's eyebrows rose. Chen? Maya Chen. At Maya's nod, she continued. I was an attending when you were on your neuro rotation. You were brilliant. We all wondered what happened to you. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She had believed herself forgotten, erased, invisible. The idea that anyone had wondered, had noticed her absence, cracked something inside her chest. My father needed help more than I needed a degree, she whispered. Richard had been typing rapidly on his phone. He looked up, his expression transformed from the arrogant billionaire who'd snapped his fingers at her hours earlier into something more human, more raw. Miss Chen, my father is alive because he saw him. Really saw him. Not as a patient, not as a billionaire's father, but as a person in danger that you could help. And you helped despite knowing it could cost you everything. He showed her his phone screen. I just transferred $680,000 to. I need your account details. For your parents' debt. Consider it payment for my father's life. Maya stared at the number, her mind unable to process it. I can't. You can, Richard interrupted. You saved my father. But that's not why I'm doing this. He took a breath. I'm also offering you a full scholarship to complete your MD at Northwestern, plus living expenses, plus a guaranteed residency position in any specialty you choose. My company endows the Ashford Medical Education Fund. We can have you re-enrolled within a week. The observation room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the window ledge. Why? Because you walked away from medicine to save your family, and tonight you walked back into it to save mine. Because Dr. Webb makes $500,000 a year to miss what you caught in 90 seconds. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted refilling water glasses. Richard's voice softened. Because my father looked at you like a person, and you returned the favor by seeing him clearly enough to save his life. That matters. Dr. Okonkwo smiled. The department would take you back in a heartbeat, Maya. You were one of the best students we've had. Maya looked through the window at Howard Ashford, who was awake now, squeezing the nurse's hand with his left hand, the hand that had been paralyzed an hour ago. He was crying, thanking the team in slurred but improving speech. He would recover. He would survive. She thought of her parents in their rented apartment, her father's haunted eyes, her mother's careful budgeting. She thought of the medical textbooks she'd kept, unable to throw them away despite having no use for them. She thought of the 2 years she'd spent invisible, competent hands pouring wine for people who never saw her face. I accept, she said quietly. Then, stronger, I accept all of it. The scholarship, the money, the chance to finish. She looked at Richard directly. But not because I saved your father. Because I earned it. I was good enough 2 years ago, and I'm good enough now. Richard smiled, genuine this time, without arrogance. Yes, you are. 6 weeks later, Maya Chen walked into Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine wearing scrubs instead of a waitress uniform, her hair down instead of scraped back, exhaustion replaced by purpose. Her parents' debt was paid. Her father had started a new business. And tonight, she wasn't serving anyone dinner. She was on her emergency neurology rotation, where Dr. Okonkwo introduced her to the team as the student who diagnosed a stroke in 90 seconds at a restaurant and forced a helicopter evacuation. The residents looked at her with respect instead of looking through her. Howard Ashford had recovered 90% of his function and now volunteered at stroke awareness events, telling anyone who would listen about the waitress who'd saved his life. Richard had fired Dr. Webb and donated $3 million to stroke research in Maya's name. But the moment Maya treasured most had come 2 weeks after that night, when she'd visited Howard during his rehabilitation. He'd taken her hand with his recovered left hand and said, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for seeing me first," Maya had replied. Because that was the truth underneath everything. In a world that made people invisible based on their uniforms, their jobs, their class, being seen, really seen, was both the greatest gift and the rarest. She had been seen. She had seen in return. And that simple act of mutual recognition had saved two lives, his and her own.